Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Mary, and I'm going to get started. Okay, so I just wanted to thank Sarah for inviting me to come on here, and she asked me if I would speak about histamines, and I said definitely, I would love to. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So for those of you that do not know me, I know there's a lot of people I do know in this group, but for those that do not know me, or if we know each other, but you don't know much about me, my name is Mary. I currently live in Missouri the past 7 years. And let's see, a little bit about me. So I am a health educator, but I'm also a nutritional therapist. So my background is in health education. I taught in public schools, and I also, hey, Sarah. So I'm looking at two different screens. So I'm looking this way, it's because I'm looking at my other screen so I can see the comments coming out there. Yeah, so my background's in health education, and my main studies are science. And then I also went on and studied functional nutritional therapy through the NTA program, also known as the Nutritional Therapy Association. It's a mouthful. And then I went on and did more certifications through the Restorative Wellness Solutions program. So I'm also a restorative wellness practitioner. So before I begin, just want to let you know this is for educational purposes only. I am not intending to diagnose or treat or mitigate any disease. So please consult your healthcare professional about any new dietary choices or supplements that may interact with any of your medications, or any questions that you have. Feel free to ask me, but also take this to your doctor or your primary care provider if you have any concerns. So a little bit about me. I love books. I love research. As you can see, these are just some of the books that I have. I'm always asking why, and I'm always asking questions. That's just my personality. I also love photography, and I just love creating things. And that's how I guess that's like my hobby, my outlet for my creativity. For me, my health journey started many years ago, but it wasn't fully sprouted, I guess, until after having my children. I do have 5 kids. And just after my first couple of kids, I realized that the doctors they just weren't answering the questions that I had. Again, like I asked a lot of questions and they weren't giving me the answers that I was looking for. It was more like Band-Aid approach versus like, why is this actually happening? So of course, I love books, and I know there's a bunch of answers in a lot of books, and someone had to answer it somewhere. So I turned to books, and I turned to webinars and listening to all different doctors, and that's what led me to where I am now. As for me, I've been dealing with fatigue for many, many years, brain fog, autoimmune conditions. For me, I've also felt just drained and just hopeless, like no one had any explanations. And working with different chiropractors and nutritionists, I've been able to regain a lot of that back. I'm still on a journey. I'm not saying that I'm fully at 100% where I would like to be, but I'm definitely on my way there. So that's where I am now. Let's see. Sarah loves books too. Yes. I think we have a lot in common. So histamines, why should we focus on histamines? So if you yourself are saying these things, or maybe you hear from someone else that you often talk to, that they get headaches often, if they have frequently itchy and watery eyes, maybe they have digestive issues, skin rashes like hives or flushing, congested often, even possibly heart racing after certain foods, or even mood changes. These are just some clues that might point to histamines. Doesn't mean that they are, but it's some clues that would give us an idea that we might want to look at your histamines. So what I do, I'm a nutritional therapist. And what is it? It's basically a foundational holistic approach to wellness that focuses on allowing the body to heal itself through a properly prepared, nutrient-dense whole food diet and a well-balanced lifestyle. So we use nutrition as like the main part. We look at the lifestyle, we use supplements and all those things to help bring balance back to the body. When I work with clients, or when I teach groups of people and students, I look at foundational things, and I go over these foundational things. And once you address these foundations, most people feel a lot better. Obviously, there are people that need a little bit extra help, but basically, if you focus on a whole food diet, optimizing your digestion, balancing your blood sugar, making sure you're getting your essential fatty acids, your minerals, and your hydration, if you focus on these foundations, most likely you will feel a whole ton better if you're not feeling well already. And just to reiterate, there is no one size fits all. What works for me might not work for someone else, which is why it's really important to know yourself. And I remember in my college years, I always had a little poster. I think it was like Hippocrates, and it says, know thyself, and that always stuck in my head because, if you don't really know yourself, your body, we can't expect everyone else to know it for us. So it's really our job and our purpose to get to know the way our bodies work and to be our number one advocate, because, we can rely on other people to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, it's really up to us to do that. Sorry, I'm getting the Amber Alerts. So why should we focus on histamines? So histamines have a lot of really cool roles in our body. Before I learned about it, I just always associated with allergies and taking antihistamines. But histamines have a lot of jobs in our body. They regulate digestion, they regulate our immune response, and they also act as neurotransmitters. They have neurotransmission jobs. And then sometimes we can have excessive or even impaired breakdowns of histamines. And we'll talk about that. So histamines, what are they? They are chemicals that are produced by the body's immune system as part of the normal inflammatory response. So their role is to help regulate various bodily functions, like I just spoke about, which includes digestion, your immune response, and your neuron transmission. So they have a lot of jobs. Where are they located? So histamines are stored in mast cells and basophils, which are immune cells found throughout our body. So an important thing that includes histamines and pretty much everything else in our body, importance of histamine balance. So it's all about balance, and that's everything. So if you have excessive histamine levels or impaired histamine breakdown, that can lead to health issues. And also, which is not commonly spoken about, if you have not enough histamines, like a low histamine level, or excessive histamine elimination, meaning your body gets rid of it too quickly, that can also lead to health issues. So histamine levels are dynamic, they change rapidly and often. That's a quote from Dr. Ben Lynch. Sarah says, I always associated histamines with bee stings and not foods until more recently. Yeah, definitely. I just got a memory of being stung by a bunch of wasps and had a histamine reaction. Not terrible, thank God. And we'll talk about our histamine buckets, our stress buckets. But for some people, they get bit by a bee, their bodies overreact and they could pass away. And you think of like the movie My Girl. I'm sure most of us older ladies have seen that. And there's other people that can get bit by a bee and they're totally fine. So we'll talk about why does one person react over more than another person. So histamine intolerance. So this is a word that some of us might have heard, but not really understand. This is a condition where the body is unable to properly break down histamine. And some causes of histamine intolerance can be caused by different things, which include our genetic predisposition. So what we inherited passed down from our parents. Also, some of us might have some enzyme deficiency. So not enough of a certain enzyme that breaks down histamines. This is an example. A lot of people might have heard the word DAO, or diamine oxidase, or DAO deficiency, which is most likely a lot of it's produced in our gut bacteria, which we'll talk about that. Then there's gut dysbiosis, which is another cause of histamine intolerance. So imbalance of our gut bacteria, and then also certain medications that interfere with histamine metabolism, like NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil and things like that. So a lot of people in like the functional field like to make the analogy of a stress bucket. So the analogy we'll talk about here. So imagine a bucket represents the histamine production in the body. So like the water coming out is the histamines being produced. And this is the bucket. And your body can only take so much histamine before it overflows. So histamine tolerance is the bucket, it has a limited capacity to hold histamine. And then when the bucket overflows, this is when we'll see some symptoms of histamine intolerance occur, indicating that the body's histamine load has exceeded its capacity to break it down. So some symptoms of histamine intolerance could be allergies and hay fever-like symptoms like nasal congestion, runny or itchy nose, sneezing, itchy or watery eyes, also digestive issues, abdominal pain or cramps, bloating and gas, diarrhea or loose stools, nausea or vomiting, acid reflux or heartburn. These are not only histamine related, but they could be, and just want to make that clear. Skin reactions, another sign of histamine intolerance, hives, rashes or itchy skin, flushing or redness of the skin, swelling or angioedema, also headaches and migraines, so tension headaches, migraine headaches, throbbing or pulsating head pain, and also surprisingly neurological symptoms, so anxiety or nervousness, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, dizziness or lightheadedness, sleep disturbances or insomnia, fatigue or low energy levels. So like we said before, it's a neurotransmitter as well, and it does go into our brain. So again, not being able to break it down enough, it can affect the way our brain works, and moods is another huge sign. Also cardiovascular symptoms, which includes rapid or irregular heartbeats, low blood pressure, changes in blood pressure, sometimes chest tightness or discomfort. So these are just symptoms that can be caused by other things besides histamine, but histamine can be one of them. So if you do have a lot of these symptoms, it's really important to write them down, bring them to your doctor or whoever your provider is. So back to the bucket. So what makes our bucket, the capacity that it can have? So there's some predisposing factors that will determine the capacity of each of our buckets. And again, we're all bio-individual, we're all different. So what makes our bucket different from one another? So it's also like, I look at it as like the cards you have been dealt. So there's genetics, which is what, we cannot control. These are things that are passed down. Then there's something called epigenetics, which includes the things that are around us that affect us, like our environment, toxins, things that we use for cleaning, the things we put in our body. I know Sarah sells Crunchy because it's a toxic-free makeup and skincare. And that's because, these are things that affect our bucket. Also, family history of disease and health. So these are things that predispose us to determine how much our bucket can handle. Then there's everyday stressors. So these are things that some of them you might be in control of, some of them you might not be in control of. And again, remember, this faucet is the histamine coming in, and how much can your bucket handle before it overflows. So everyday stressors that affect how much our capacity includes things like a processed diet, too much or too little exercise, inadequate hydration, inadequate sleep, smoking and drugs, excessive alcohol, toxins, makeup, all those things we put on and in our body, our lotions, our shampoo, our conditioners, our sunblock, perfumes, also health issues, work or school stress, family stress, conflict, finances, uncertainty, politics, world events. These are all things that can affect our bucket. Hopefully that doesn't stress anyone out too much. And then there's major stressors, things that really affect our bucket. It could either be like in a quick moment, or it could be over time adding up. So accidents or injuries, things that, you don't plan to have, major infections or illness, all these things might bring me back to COVID. And, if we had COVID or just during that whole time period, a lot of people handled it very differently. Serious life change like death, divorce, loss of job, emotional trauma, physical trauma, and also just accumulation of minor everyday stressors can accumulate and lead to a major stress. So that's, this is an overflowing bucket, and people that experience all the symptoms that I mentioned already might be here. So some ways so we want to put some holes in that bucket to relieve some of that stress that we have. These are some examples of stress relievers, things that will help decrease the stress and will release those histamines and let your body be able to process them in the way that it's supposed to. So regular gentle movement, I'm thinking like you don't have to join a gym. You can just go outside for a walk every single day. Having a whole food diet, proper sleep, rest and leisure, prayer and meditation, meaningful relationships, creativity. Do you have outlets? Journaling, music that's relaxing, massage, time in nature, laughter. These are all things that will help poke holes in that bucket. And then we'll talk a little bit more about this too. Thank you, Sarah. So I went over the whole list of this, but just to quickly go over symptoms of histamine intolerance can include, but not limited to, nasal congestion, itchy or watery eyes, skin rashes, digestive issues, headaches, mood changes. These are all things that can be signs of histamine overload. So how can we identify histamine intolerance? So here's 4 different ways. I'm going to go into them. One is doing a food journal. Then there's the elimination diet. Then there's ways of assessing your gut dysbiosis and food sensitivities. And then there's also nutrient support. So food and mood journal. So I'm going to share a link in the chat function after this is over. Maybe Sarah can copy and paste it. Actually, we'll wait to the end. But I'm going to have my food journal in there, which you can download and make copies of. You can feel free to share that. But keeping a detailed food journal can help identify potential triggers that contribute to histamine intolerant symptoms. So basically what I do here, I usually like print out a few of these, or I even have a book that I get on Amazon too. And I just, record my water intake, record my exercise and movement, bowel movements, the food and drinks you've had, supplements, and then symptoms here. I have bloating as one, but you can make up other ones here and you put it on a scale 1 to 3. And then also your mood here, and also which bowel movement you've had. And anytime. So this is a great way, it does take intention and it does take a little bit of time. But if for me, like I'm the type of person that needs to see it, so I just make a copy of it, keep it at my table where I sit. And when I sit down, I just write down. That way, if you wait for the end of the day, you might forget, or if you wait till the next day, our memory, if we have brain fog, most likely it's better to just write it down as you remember. And this is a great way to start making connections, because sometimes when you have a food sensitivity, you don't get a reaction right away. It could be up to 72 hours to even for some people up to 5 days. So food reactions don't show right away. That's why I like to do a 7-day journal, because you get to see over time what's going on. Sarah says, my kids are so annoyed when I ask them all these details, including, I know we talk about poop all the time in our house. It's at a point where I have to tell them to stop talking about it when we're eating dinner, because it becomes a habit. And when we have guests over, we have to like kind of rein that in. But yeah, so you just get your kids comfortable talking about poop. So some examples of high histamine foods. When I first learned this, I was a little bit surprised, but you live and you learn. So some examples include pickles and sauerkraut, things that are fermented, like cheese, yogurt, kefir, forgot the R, wine, especially red wine, vinegar. Vinegars come in like a range, but mostly like balsamic and red wine vinegar are higher in histamines, whereas like apple cider vinegar, that should be better, but it could have a reaction depending on you. Oh, hey, Tiffany, welcome. Bone broth, the more hours you cook it, the more histamines are just naturally produced in there. Even though bone broth is great, but for people that, again, have that bucket that's full, they might have a reaction to bone broth. Smoked or cured meats, canned fish and seafood, grains, even avocado and soy. Some people might react with a high histamine reaction, and we spoke about those symptoms already. So again, that's why keeping that food journal will help you understand, all right, am I reacting to this, or is it like what's going on? Some examples of low histamine foods include fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, lean meats, gluten-free grains. Also, one thing I wanted to add on here was, leftovers. Like, it's great to make a big batch of food, but sometimes the longer food is left over in the refrigerator, the more histamines it's produced. And actually, Dr. Jeannie mentioned on Facebook that she works with her meat processor and she asks them to freeze it right away versus letting it hang, because like most processing plants will let the meat hang for a week. So thank you, Dr. Jean, for bringing that up and to my attention. So if you do order meat, asking them to freeze it quicker instead of letting it hang for longer. And then, so some more ways of getting to identifying histamine intolerance. So assessing gut dysbiosis and food sensitivities. So I always say a daily poop is a symptom of your gut health. So ideally, here's a stool chart, also known as a Bristol stool chart. We want to be having at least one bowel movement per day, and it should be a Bristol 3 or 4, ideally. If you have little rabbit pellets or if you have diarrhea all the time, that's a sign that you might have some gut dysbiosis, or that you definitely do have gut dysbiosis. So, I like to call these a log. So you want at least one solid good log at least once a day, more than 3, in between 1 and 3 per day, usually after like a large meal. Some people go like after each one, but that's a sign. Then there is the option of testing. So for me, when I work with my clients one-on-one, I like to do stool testing because it helps us identify and target specific imbalances that are happening in their gut microbiome. And any type of gut dysbiosis can impair the breakdown of histamine and also contribute to histamine intolerance. And then also there are certain strains of bacteria that produce more histamine than others. So we would pick that up on a stool test. And then also identifying food sensitivities. So this will help us make more targeted dietary modifications while we're working on gut healing. So like I tell all my clients, I don't expect this to be forever. And just like with the foods that I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't want to remove those foods forever because those foods are nutritious and they're good for you. But while we're working on your stress bucket, we want to poke more holes so that your body can actually process those histamines. So the goal is to getting that bucket so that it's not overflowing. And that's by supporting your body, working on those foundations and allowing your body to take a break from any toxins or stress that might be going on. Here's an example of some of the histamine producing bacteria that can show up on a GI map. This is what I use for stool testing. So this is a list of the different bacteria that tend to produce more histamines than others. So if we see these like a pattern, then we know that this is possibly an option and we will deal with that accordingly. Then there's also nutrient supports. So here's some examples. So there's different strains of probiotics. They're not all created equal. The 2 popular ones that are good at helping process histamines are the B. infantis and the lactobacillus rhamnosus. That's popular ones. Also, Saccharomyces boulardii is another really good one that people use for yeasts and I think, parasites and some other stuff. So that's like a really good all around one. Raw honey, propolis, and bee pollen, great nutrient supports if your body can handle the bee pollen. Vitamin D, vitamin C, quercetin, bromelain, butterbur is another one, stinging nettle, peppermint, ginger, turmeric. You can find these as whole herbs, or in supplement form or in tea form. Also, some yogurt strains tend to have, the bacteria strains in some yogurts tend to have higher amounts of bacteria that produce histamine. So you want to be careful when you're eating yogurts too. And again, going back to the food journal, which I'll provide for you at the end of this, it's definitely something you want to keep record of. Eliminate, but not forever. Exactly. Yeah, we want to eat all these healthy foods, but if our body's having a hard time processing them, then like I said, like focus on those foundations, get your body to where it needs to be so the bucket can release all those extra histamines, and then we can add those foods back in. Here's an example. Seeking Health has this probiotic that a lot of people are very happy with, and you can get this straight from the Seeking Health website. I also have it on my dispensary on my website at ideservehealth.com. And then lifestyle factors. So these are ways that we can help support our body to start releasing these histamines and breaking them down. Stress management, sleep quality, and environmental triggers. So for stress management, because there is definitely a correlation between stress and the way our body handles different diseases, it's really important to work on stress reduction techniques. I find a lot of clients are, when they work with trauma therapy or some sort of limbic system retraining programs, it does help those people that tend to, if they're tried everything and they're finding that it's not working, doing this type of work can help a lot of people get over that hump. Also, there's emotional freedom technique, which is like the tapping at your acupressure points, mindfulness, deep breathing exercises, and just regular physical activity. There's some online programs for the limbic retraining programs. I think one of them is Gupta, Gupta. I forgot the website. And there's another one called primaltrust.org. And I've heard a lot about that, especially from Dr. Jabin Moore. He speaks about that all the time. So those are just two ways. And I also, for me personally, I did the 21-day journey with Dr. Amy, AIME, and she teaches a program called The Biology of Trauma and how trauma affects your biology. And it's, everyone has some sort of trauma. It doesn't have to be like one major event. It could be, things over time, or it could be, like we said already, one major event. So like too much too soon, or having too little nutrients for too long can lead to traumatic stresses in the body. Then there is sleep quality. So quality sleep supports your immune function and histamine balance. So, prioritizing good sleep hygiene and by establishing a regular sleep schedule, creating a relaxing bedtime routine, optimizing the sleep environment. So, turning off the TV, turn off the news. We should not be listening to loud noises like within the last 2 hours before going to bed, dimming the lights. These are all just like a couple of things to do. Sarah loves her sleep. Yes. So it's really important to prioritize that and make that an important part of your day, even though sometimes it's really hard. But again, going back to the Food and Mood Journal, you'll be recording your sleep on there. And if you have like an iWatch or something that records your sleep, you can use that as a tool of, measuring your sleep quality and your health overall. And it's a really helpful tool to do that with. Then there is environmental triggers. So sometimes there's things in our environment that can trigger histamine and worsen symptoms. So some things can include pollen, dust mites, pet dander, molds, and pollutants. So some ways of working with those things is getting a good air filter in your house, cleaning the dust. But obviously, if you're reacting highly to it, that's a sign that there's some kind of imbalance within the body. Like you can have two people in the same house and one person can react horrible while the other one seems totally fine. And that goes back to our stress buckets. This person's bucket might be overflowing because of whatever has gone on in that person's life, genetic, epigenetic, all that stuff. Their bucket's overflowing, whereas another person is totally okay. So it's really important to look at those things. But in the meantime, while you're working on those foundations, looking at your environment and seeing what might be triggering it, that's making it worse. Mold is one of those things that a lot of people are affected by and don't know. So it's really good to, check your house for that. Let's see. I went over this. I must have doubled. So yeah, just a quick review. We want to balance our stress bucket. A lot of the ways I work with my clients is by opening detox pathways, making sure they're using the bathroom, bowel movements regularly, urinating regularly, hydrating. Again, gentle movements, whole food diet, sleep, resting, prayer, meditation, whatever you do, pick one, do both. Having meaningful relationships, learning boundaries, all these things are huge, creative outlets, journaling, music, massages, time in nature, turning off the screens, turning off the news, just taking a break from the world sometimes is something we all need. I'm going to post, so Sarah, if you want, can you post this link into the comments? I think I texted to you. If not, just let me know, I can send it again. And so on this link, I have the 7-day food and mood journal. I have some other links that include low histamine diets. I have a link to this book, which I have here, and I also used to help create my presentation, some of it. And it's basically a histamine workbook. And this is by Dr. Ben Lynch he's the creator of Seeking Health supplements. And he has a lot of like questionnaires in here to help you really understand if you're having a histamine reaction or not. But if anything I said resonated with you and you've checked off a lot of the symptoms that I read, then you might want to look into that even further. Thanks, Sarah. So just to end it, quick review. All the foundations are connected with one another. They're not separate in separate compartments. They're all flowing together. Oops, I forgot to put my logo on there. So make sure, we want to work on preparing properly prepared, nutrient-dense whole food diets, optimizing your digestion, balancing your blood sugar, getting those good fatty acid balance, mineral status, and hydration. On the link that Sarah's sharing, I also have a link to my YouTube channel where I have other videos. A colleague of mine, we do Food for Thought Fridays, and we go over blood sugar balance, we go over digestion, we go over fatty acids, good fats, bad fats. So definitely check that out if you want to learn more. If you want to reach me, I'm posting from my Facebook page, so you can reach me on Facebook, but you can also email me at mary@ideservehealth.com. My website is ideservehealth.com, and that's it. Oh, Sarah, you love that book. Yes, it's an awesome book. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Sarah, did you have any questions before I sign off? Thank you. So thank you, Sarah, so much for inviting me. I had a great time putting this together and teaching about it. Feel free to reach out with any questions you have. Have a great day.